It is sad that in this country, if you are a black woman or a girl and you go missing, how many people really know about it? If you are missing due to exploitation and human trafficking, people don't really pay you much attention. And we have been screaming at the mountaintops for this for years. Black women have been screaming about this for years. And not too many people have been listening. And I think it's important that we listen. Look, I will say this with my full chest, 10 toes down. Every single time some BS in this country happens, we got the warnings from black women for years before it happens. They'll be saying, hey, y'all may want to pay attention to this because this is a bad thing. And then people will neglect ever hearing what they say until it affects all of us more broadly. Then that's when black women go, we told you so. And I think it's important that we listen to them more and more now because this is important. So I'm going to share this story because I'm happy that this is happening because we need this. We need this desperately. So it says, first director of state's missing and murdered black women and girls office save one girl. So I want to give a shout out to Sabby for sharing the story with me. This is a positive story that I can't wait to dive into. This is out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. It says Minnesota made history by establishing the first missing and murdered black women and girls office in the country. I'm going to say that again. The first missing and murdered black women and girls office in the country. It is 2024. Black people have been in this land for 500 years. And this is the first missing black woman and girls office ever. I want you to sit with that for a second. All right, let's continue. Now we know who will lead the groundbreaking unit, the Department of Public Safety, named Keila Burks as its first director. She says she knows there's work to do. Black women and girls make up 7% of Minnesota's population, but are 40% of domestic violence victims. They are 3 times as likely to be murdered as their white counterparts. My lofty goal is to be an example. Save someone. Save one girl. That's what she says. It's a role where she knew she could have an impact. The opportunity to help people and give people a voice who look like me, who historically their voice has been marginalized and been silenced. Burke says she saw disparities at a young age. It shaped her lens in life. She says, just as a citizen, usually when young white women go missing, they're plastered across the news nationally. When I've seen black children or black girls go missing, it's more feet on the ground, putting people up flyers and posters, but they're not getting this national media coverage. This is true. Black girl goes missing, crickets. White girl goes missing, everybody's like, where are they at? Where are they at? Where are they at? Where are they at? And we have seen this time and time and time again. If you guys are on Twitter, you guys will notice if somebody puts out a missing child, especially if that missing child is black, I'm retweeting it. Because how often are missing black kids, how often are they talked about? If a young black girl goes missing, there's amber alerts. There's also silver alerts for the older people. What about older black people, older black women that may go missing? Especially those who have Alzheimer's or dementia. How much are they overlooked? Let's continue. She has a bachelor's degree and master's degree in criminal justice. She's been an advocate for kids in family court. Someone with this newly created office will focus on is getting a better understanding of the problem by collecting data, reviewing cases, and setting guidelines, and working on legislation. Awareness, treating cases in a similar fashion, giving them the same resources. The office will work alongside law enforcement to investigate cold cases. Other cases could be reopened. Says they'll coordinate searches when black women and girls go missing. Burke says she's heard stories from families around the state, and that drives her purpose. One of the things that I think will also help this is that if we have a new system of public safety, meaning defund the police and abolish the police as we know it, to have a new public safety apparatus that is inclusive of all people and that does not marginalize those of us who have a little bit more melanin in our skin, because that's important too. Because if you have a system of policing that's built on white supremacy, then of course they're not going to give a damn about black women and girls. So this is why we also need to rebuild our public safety systems in this country too. Now, while this is a good thing, I would say we still need to defund the police on the road to abolishing this system of policing that we have at this point and rebuild it anew so that it is inclusive of all people. Also, let's not forget, and some of y'all are not going to like me for this, but it is what it is because I'm going to say it with my whole chest. We also need to protect our black trans women and femmes too, because they also go through this too. And it is not right that they get overlooked over and over and over. They are workers too. They are people too. They are the proletariat too. I'm going to tell you right now, when I say Black Lives Matter, I mean all black lives, not just the ones who fit some people's narrative. Let's continue in this story. Quote, it's devastating. It's heartbreaking. It's almost a situation where you don't know how you're going to rebound from it. And hopefully this office can be the type of support that they can move through these very heartbreaking circumstances. She hopes that the work that they do here speaks to other states. So they said the next step is to hire about 5 staff members. Burke says it will take time to find the right people with the right hearts. A bill to create a task force to study the problem in Wisconsin has stalled this legislative session. So that is a good news. One of the things that we have to talk about is why this is absolutely necessary. Black women and girls are constantly, going missing, and people do not give it much attention. I want to share this. This is from Al Jazeera. Let's go here.
Barely make their headlines. So Our question today is not why does that happen? We all know why that happens, but what can be done about it? In recent years, communities, families have been involved with somebody who's been loved, who's gone missing or even murdered. They have rallied around to protect Black women. Let me give you one example. It's an HBO documentary called Black and Missing.
So I'm not going to play the documentary preview because unfortunately, I do not want us to get a copyright claim. But yes, we actually have to raise the alarms for this because Black women and girls go missing so often, and yet this deeply underreported in this country.
Missing people, except Black folks spit and grit.
So helping us share this story with you, this issue with you on the stream, Alex, Aisha, Amara, thank you so much for being part of our program. Alex, please introduce yourself to our global audience. Tell them who you are, what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Alexandria Noah. I'm the Director of Political Advocacy at Black Boston, a community organization, and a doctoral student at Suffolk University studying youth development.
It's good to have you. Aisha, I want you to introduce yourself to our stream audience, but also tell them your connection with this particular issue, Black women going missing, not being reported enough.
My name is Aisha Miller, and September 11th, 1986, my mother was kidnapped and murdered, as well as my oldest sister, who was 18 years old at the time. And for 21 years, we didn't know what happened to them. And it wasn't until the cold case detectives worked that case in 2007, 2008, where they found him, and he was already in prison for having done the same thing to another young lady just 2 months after they kidnapped him. He kidnapped and murdered my mother and sister. So now what I do is host a show that reflects and focuses on the effects of childhood trauma on adult behavior.
Aisha, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you being on today's show, bringing your personal experience and sharing it with us in our show. I'm going to bring in Amara. Amara, thanks for being on the stream. Again, please introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them who you are and what you do.
Hi, well, thank you for having me. My name is Amara Kofer, and I am the creator, host, and executive producer for Black Girl Gone, a true crime podcast.
Thank you so much. All right, so we have three guests who are able to answer your questions, really dig into this topic. It's a hard conversation to have, but if you're on YouTube right now, your comments, your questions, I welcome them. You can be part of the discussion. Alex, let's start. Alex, Amara, Aisha, let's start with giving our international audience an idea of what it is like when you see coverage of, if you see coverage of Black women who've gone missing, or maybe something tragic has happened to them. Just in a nutshell, Alex, can you help our international audience understand what it is like?
Yeah. What I can say, when a Black woman or girl is gone missing, there is not equitable coverage. And I think a lot of people understand white woman missing syndrome, which was coined by African-American journalist Gwen Ifill back in 2004. And this was basically aligning with that same sentiment, is that when Black women and girls are missing, there is a lack of urgency. But when it's someone that is white, or in other words, or not in other words, but what people will say is conventionally attractive white woman, that all of that image is important. And when people view that, oh, it's like this person is viewed soft. So it really goes back to the depictions of Black womanhood and Black girls, how society has trained our mind to think about Black women and girls. And I think that reflects on how our law enforcement treats Black girls. We've been trained to view them in a certain way. So there is not equitable coverage. And I think that's one of the reasons why, is because there's a lack of protection. We are seen as, we're not valuable to society.
This is something I think this needs to be harped on, because when you are seen as invaluable, as not valuable to society, then you are considered as a throwaway. And it's also easy to dehumanize them also as well. Speaking as a Black man, I know how that is. So Black women are also, as far as the social hierarchy in this country, Black women are at the bottom. I say Black women, Black trans women, and Black femmes are at the bottom. And so the problem is that we need to start seeing ourselves in them, but we don't, because it's constantly perpetuated. And this keeps a hierarchy in place, and this keeps a divide in place so that the system continues, so that everybody keeps being exploited. But some people feel a little bit better because they're higher on that ladder than the rest. So we Black men, we feel a little bit better because we're not way down there as Black women. Even though we have a foot on our necks, it's not as bad. So at least we're not Black women, right? This is why solidarity and intersectionality, I know some people don't like that word, but it's a real thing. Intersectionality is important. This is why it needs to be talked about, right? And then on top of it, because we're seen as less than, then when we talk about pay disparities, wealth disparity, then it's more of a put yourself up by your bootstraps, right? This is why, if you're white, you need to have solidarity with the rest of us. Because if they're willing to get behind, so yes. Let's continue.
I see you nodding, Amara. Articulate that, Noel. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's exactly correct. It's one of the reasons why I started my show. We all know that there is a lack of coverage of these stories, but there's a lack of concern. And, one of the excuses that, people often make is that when they elevate the stories of missing white women like Gabby over again was that she was so relatable and that they could see themselves in her and they could see their daughters in her or their friends in her. And they don't see that when Black women are missing, and that's a problem. And it's the way in which their stories are covered. It's the way in which we don't get into their lives. We don't find out who they are. And so, how could someone connect to them if we don't know these women? So, that's why I wanted to do a show that focuses more on telling who these women were, so that you can eliminate the excuse of, well, I can't relate to that, or, we can all relate to each other, even if it's just that we are women, you know what I mean? Like, we all have different struggles, we all come from different places, but some of our struggles are the same, and we can relate to each other, in a way that makes these stories more real for people and more, something that they care about. I think that's what makes the difference.
So Gabby Petito was a young white woman who eventually was found to have been strangled. That story was on cable news almost every night. It was like a running tragic soap opera. Aisha, what do you want to add here?
My question is, do we hear about it? Do we actually hear about it? It comes on, but it's a blip in the news. It comes on maybe one news cycle, one or two. I know, at least for my family, maybe a week. That was about it. And until we started raising our voices and going to the police more often. We wrote to everybody, every news outlet, not just news outlets, television programs, major networks that were on at that time, and nobody paid attention. No one gave us any credibility. So what I know and understand is that nobody listens. Well, very few people listen. I won't say no one, but now I'm grateful that we have more opportunities to do that, such as the different platforms, such as Miss Black Girl Gone and my own, that we're able to bring a voice and bring the voices alive and let them know that we are human. Just like my mom, even today, this is 35 years. This has taken me 35 years to even talk about to the degree that it needs to be talked about for me, because it's so personal. It was so hurtful.
Femi, I can't. Sorry.
So Aisha,
I'm sorry.
you sent us this picture. You sent us several pictures. One is you are the spitting image of your mum. Okay, so everyone, this is Aisha's mum. This is a little, I'm going to say baby girl, but you were about 9 at the time. This is you, Aisha, and you lost your mum and your sister in a tragic situation, and you had about a week's worth of attention from the media, and that was it. Why did they move on? Why didn't they stay with this story?
At that time, they wanted to accuse my father, because generally in a domestic case, they want to pin it on a relative, somebody that they knew. So it went unnoticed. And because they couldn't connect him to it, they had no DNA. It wasn't that popular back in 1986, but they couldn't pin him. And so they couldn't conclude the matter for him. And so it just went cold. The case went cold. And unfortunately and regretfully, the Tommy Lee Stewart, who was the assailant, he did the same thing to another young lady just 2 months after that. She lived. And because she lived, she's the reason why we know what we know today.
So yeah, and there was a oh my God, what's his name? They did a Netflix show about him, but he was targeting black people, and a lot of black people that he was targeting were black gay men. So yeah, that's very similar, but the thing is like, because it's not as cared about, it is absolutely necessary for us to care about it, because it's people, man. So I think that this is a good thing. I think we need more. Jeffrey Dahmer, thank you, Dr. Donnie. Yes, Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, everybody talked about that, and why did he get away with what he got away with? Because his victims were black, largely. So we have to change the system. Thomas says, I believe a black civil rights bill is needed that combats and gives justice to the missing black women issue. This needs specific focus on the cause and effect and how to fix. Absolutely. I think that we need this to happen, because the thing is, unfortunately, when it comes to us, we don't have bills like this. Like, for instance, they did a bill for anti-Asian and Pacific Islander hate, which I agree with. We should have those bills. But where's the one specifically for black people? Right? Where's, like, for instance, they'll do a hate crime bill. Like, they passed one for anti-Semitism, right? To go according to a different definition of anti-Semitism, which is really just anti-Jewishness. And then they want to include being anti-Zionist and as being anti-Semitic, which is absolutely wrong, because Zionism and Judaism are two different things. But that's what Congress passed. But where's the anti-blackness flaw? I don't see that. So, of course, I think it's important that we do this.